All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass.
Welcome to another episode of A Swift Kick in the Ass. Today I have an episode. I think this one's gonna just open your mind and maybe open it in such a way that you're never gonna see life the same as you do. This is a very interesting topic for me. I'd like to welcome to the show Thomas Thatcher, who is the author of The TAC Philosophy, Detach Yourself from Suffering. So, suffering. No one likes to suffer, but what's the difference between pain and suffering? And welcome to the show, by the way.
Thank you very much. It's really glad to be here. Well, pain is kind of what happens to us, and then the suffering is everything that comes after the pain. So, for example, if we have something where there is a rejection, the pain part is the rejection. Ooh, that hurts. I didn't want to get offended, or I got rejected, or I got discounted, or whatever. But then what happens is the suffering part is everything after that. Well, maybe I'm not a good person, or this guy is, I'll try to find some negative points about him, so I'll feel justified that he offended me, so that I can offend him, or things like that. So that's the problem: is we take something that what happens and we don't leave it there. We then add to it and put stories and narratives, which leads to rackets and eventually gets us on the tack.
Yeah, so ooh, the tack. So that's perfect segue. The tack. What is
Right.
the tack?
Well, that tack is those wonderful narratives and stories that we tell ourselves that we get attached to that causes us pain. So,
Okay.
for example, in my case, I was in the family business with my brother and father, and I was the youngest child. And so I can relate to the story like with Prince Harry and Prince Andrew, where Prince Harry was kind of the second son. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt kind of the second son. And the problem is that because I felt like the second son, I felt like I was a second person. But that's not necessarily the case. And that was my tack. My tack was the attachment that I had to be in the first position or the first son in order to feel worthy, important, and valuable, when in essence, that really wasn't the case. But
Mm-hmm.
when we tell these stories to ourselves and create these narratives, they can be very, very real. And I'm not saying that the pain is not real. No, the pain is real. It's just that what suffering in part comes to when we take the pain and then we create all of this imaginations and all of these stories and all of these things, that conclusions and meetings and everything
Yeah.
that just simply aren't true. So, like in my case, my father does not love me. That was not true. My brother does not love me. That was not true.
Right.
Because I'm not the eldest son, and I haven't got and I'm not the heir apparent to take over for my father when he was retired. Then that means I'm not worthy of anything. I mean, those things just aren't true. But the problem is that once we get these stories and these narratives, we create layers upon layers. And like, we're looking like magnets, and we're saying, okay, this is my interpretation. This is what I really think. This is what I really believe. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to look for everything under the sun that's going to support that belief so I can be right about it. So I can say, see, I told you so. That's exactly the way it is. And that being right about something is what gets us into real trouble.
Yeah, so that's you say something very interesting. So you're put it's I hate to say laws of attraction because I'm not all that familiar with laws of attraction, but what you said makes sense to me is that we put things out, things happen to us, we have a certain perspective of the world, and then we go out looking for other perspectives that match that and support that belief that we have in ourselves. I mean,
Yes.
I think it's pretty common for all of us to have some type of thought or belief that isn't true. It's not rooted in reality. But by God, it feels real, and
Oh
those
yeah.
things are painful, and
Oh yeah.
it's difficult to get over. Um, you mentioned your father not loving you. Yeah, my father was very emotionally distant. He had some emotional issues. But what's kind of funny is that I'd say, "I love you, Dad," and you know what he'd say? He'd say, "Thank you."
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a
Oh
joke.
wow.
He
Yeah.
couldn't, and did that mean that he didn't love me? No, not at all. He
No.
loved me with
No.
all of his heart.
Absolutely.
I was
Yeah.
his world. I mean,
Right.
you know, he just couldn't express it.
Right.
Um, but so I totally, and that was one of the tacks, I guess, that I had, and it took me a while to kind of figure out for myself. And also, I have an older sister, um, who's much smarter than I am and much closer to my dad. And my dad's passed, but I would kind of felt the same way about being the second sibling. And
Oh yeah.
these are just not things rooted really in reality, but we tell themselves that we tell ourselves that they are. For me, it's like being the black sheep of the family.
Right.
Well, I'm not really the black sheep.
Right.
And, it's just the way I kind of view myself. And then you go out and you find things that support your view. It's interesting, but you know, so how do you get out of that? I mean, what do you, how do you counter that? And
Well, you've got to shine a light on your story. That's one of the problems. I mean, see, we have something that let's take some circles here. The first
okay,
circle is what happens. The second circle is the interpretation of what happens, and the third circle is our story. Now, what happens is that we then take this story and we build upon it, and we've been right about it, and we've added to it, and we've embellished it, and we made it, really look like a wonderful story. We've had other people involved in it, reaffirm things. We look for people that reaffirm, and those that don't reaffirm, we say, okay, I'll discount them, but I'll look for the ones that reaffirm my story so that we can call it the truth. But the problem is, it's not the truth. It is the interpretation of the truth. And that's the difference. And you have to distinguish between what happens and what the interpretation from what happens. And those are two distinct circles. But we want to try to bridge them right into one. We want to try to take everything into one and say, this is the way it is. And it's not. And so one of the things that I had to do, and I journaled a lot of how I got out of this situation with depression because I was near suicidal. I was, ready to end it. I, had to
wow.
be in darkened rooms. The whole blinds had to be closed. I was curled up in a ball, just totally suffering. And the mere anything of light was offensive to me.
Mm-hmm.
Anything of light was offensive
Yeah.
to me. Now that's the stats of what I would be. That's to show you how attached I was to my story. How could this happen to me? This is so terrible. My dad's rejected me. My dad doesn't love me. He doesn't care. My family doesn't care. I'm all alone or whatever. And it wasn't true. It wasn't true. And I remember when I was talking to a friend about my story, trying to get some sympathy and all that stuff. And he says, well, uh, who came up with all this
Heh.
stuff? And I go, well, what do you mean? Well, all the stuff that you're telling me. And I go, well, what do you mean who came up with it? Well, you did, Tom.
Yeah.
You created it, right? You created it. And that's kind of what helped me understand really what the TAC philosophy was all about. That we create these wonderful stories so that we can have really four basic things. One, we don't have to be responsible. Two, we can control without being so that we're not controlled. Three, that we can dominate. And then four, so that we can be right about something. And I will love to put anything on a person's resume because when people write resume, I love the saying a resume is as close as you get to perfection. And I think that's somewhat kind of true. but I would love to put on the resume that you're right about this. You're right about it. And I don't know, what do you want? Do you want a candy bar? Do you want, a ticket to a ball game or whatever? Because this idea that we're right, people value that it means so much and it means very, very little. And when we get so fixed on something, then we cut ourselves up from possibility and growth and learning and joy and all those wonderful things that we need.
I am so glad you came on this show because you really just hit a nerve with, or not a nerve, it's a good thing. It- what is right for one person may be wrong for another person,
Right.
and vice versa.
Yes.
Going along with what you're saying, and we might be lying to ourselves about things. Um, and like you said, going to a good friend, gosh, I have some great friends, and I'm so thankful for them because throughout the years, decades, these guys have become like brothers to me and have really helped me become the person that I am because of exactly what you did with your friend. Just talking to them and getting to learn more about yourself. Be, uh, the problem does begin with each and every one of us. And we define really what is a problem, and also, what we're suffering our pain from. Like, I think we help define that. And I think what you're saying is that we experience pain in our real life, and it's horrible and it's real. But we
Yeah, it is
but we
real.
carry that with us,
Yeah.
past that physical pain. And I guess it could be also mental pain, as well, like you said, dealing with, these misconceptions, or I mean, I don't even know how we come up with these thoughts. Um, but I understand too that most of it does go back to childhood. Some type of childhood experience could be just an instant where you had that thought and something clicked where you're like, I'm not loved. Whatever it was, it could be totally, and maybe that's why it's so easy for us to believe because we've thought it all of our life.
Well, let me make a couple of points. First of all, this is probably going to blow some minds,
Good.
whatever. But every reason that we give to justify being on the tack is a lie. Now, just kind of ponder that thought. Every reason we give to justify ourselves to be on the tack is a lie. And so we, when we are not in our natural state, which is loving, kind, forgiving, and at peace, and we're on it. And so
Hmm.
we are like in blameful and revengeful and high anxiety and all that stuff. Or we're not being the loving person that we need to be. We've got to have an explanation for it. I've got to justify this. I got to justify the way
Yeah,
I'm
that's true.
being. And so every time you justify the way you're being, it's not correct. So in other words, you know, Tom, why do you have so much hatred with your father? Well, because I'll tell you all the reasons. This, and this. It made me feel justified, but they weren't true. It weren't true. That's the problem. So what you have to do is you have to realize that if you're not at your natural state of loving, kind, peace, and forgiving, because that is what your natural state is all about. I use an
Hmm.
example in the book about a cork that we push down into the ocean. And that cork wants to jump right back up. Okay. That's our
Hmm.
natural state, wanting to jump right back up. The only thing that's going to hold it down is like a rock or a fish or an anchor or something that will hold it down. That in turn, I'm going to extend the metaphor to how we hold things down in life: blame, resentment, fear, disappointment. things that happened to us that we didn't like, or that we got offended, or all of those types of things. And so then that beautiful state of what we were born as and what we were meant to be cannot submerge because it's the court can't come up. It's
Yeah.
blocked. So what we got to do to get back to that natural state is take all those things away and just let us come back to naturally who we are. And then naturally who we are, then we start to see clearly. You know how they talk in the scriptures how you're blind so you cannot see or something
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
When you get back up into this natural state, you start looking at things in a completely
Yeah.
different way, that of forgiving and openness and love and kindness and understanding and compassion rather than revenge, leverage, manipulation, all of those types of things. And so that's very, very important to understand that you don't need to sit there and start fixing yourself on all these types of things. How am I going to fix myself? How am I going to fix myself? You don't need to fix yourself. You're a beautiful person who you are. You just
Hmm.
got to let yourself be that person. Let the cork surface is what you got to do.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I've uh I've been learning a lot about myself really the last no, for long all my life. I've been learning about myself. It's a lifelong journey, but I've learned the importance of letting go. And I think that kind of relates a lot to this because sometimes we cling on to things and we think it serves us. And maybe at one time it did, but it doesn't anymore. And we just,
Right.
and if it's a thought or a habit, I mean, it could be a lot of
Right.
different things, but it's something that's causing you pain in your current life. Uh, and I have a friend that's actually going through a depressive period right now. And I was trying to figure out a way to get him back to a point to where he recognizes that he has these external sources of problems, has late bills and, they kind of light living type of things. But
Yeah.
um, he can't figure out that he's the one who caused the issues.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
so he can't go, he's looking outwards, not looking inwards. Um, because if he looked inwards, he would and accepted the responsibility or the accountability, held himself accountable, he might look at it a little bit differently and begin taking steps to, to figure that out. But he's so caught up and he has his blinders on. And that's what you were saying is that once you have that, you know, epiphany, once you're back to loving and caring and just your kind of your natural state, like the cork, once you have those ties off and you can float freely and bob
Yeah.
around and you can
Yeah.
oh look at that you
Well,
get so
yeah.
much it's
Yeah.
so much fun to be like a free cork bobbing around on the
Well,
ocean, but
yeah.
but it's not so fun to have like a fishing line tied to a weight and
Right.
you're down drowning.
But
These are great.
you have the tool to cut the fishing line, though. See,
Yeah.
you have the tool to cut the fishing line. If you want to cut the fishing line, you can.
It,
So, for example, you can go back to the childhood and say, "Well, yeah, this is, the reason why I am now is because of my childhood, and this is what happened in my childhood, and whatever." And really, I'm sorry, but that's kind of just like a racket, because you are saying that because now I was in the past, this is the way I have to be in the future. No, you don't. No, you don't.
right, right.
I mean, or this is the way as in the past, this is the way I got to be in the present. I mean, when I had some experience studying some of the situation with gangs, their past was their present, and so their present was then their future. And so what the problem
Mm,
is that we have to create a future so that instead of the arrow going from past to present, present to future, it turns on the future side and points this direction so that then the future allows us to be something different in the present. So I'm not saying that what didn't happen at childhood, we could have been
Hmm.
traumatized, we could have had serious trauma and everything. No way am I ignoring that. And no way that I'm saying that it did not happen and it wasn't painful and that you didn't go through a lot. Please do not think that. What I'm saying is do you want to carry that with you all the way then, the rest of your life? Is that what you want to do? Do you want to make that as a justification of why you can't do anything more because that happened to you? Are you going to allow that thing that happened to you then now to carry all the way the rest of your life? No, you don't have to do that. You can be completely different. And the way you can be completely different is instead of going to your complaint. Oh, sorry here. Sorry. Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. It looks funny with the AI background when you
Yeah,
do that
no,
because you're
okay.
like reaching
No,
into space.
yeah, well, what I'm saying is
Yeah.
is that you you go from your complaint, not from your complaint, but your commitment. And where is the commitment? It is future based, right? So therefore, when you then make interpretations, they are future based, not past based, and that's different. And so if something happens, your interpretations are not oh, blame or resentment or things like that. But
Okay.
your
So,
interpretation comes is and say, this is what I'm committed to. So what's missing? What's next? What have I got to do? What's effective action in this case? You see the difference how one leans towards commitment and the other leans toward complaint and racket? Because once you go to complaint, you go to narrative, and then you go to racket, and then you go to the payoffs, and then you get trapped. But once you go to commitment, then you go to your future, and that's the whole different side of things.
yeah, so that is a really interesting view. I hadn't really thought of it. So what I'm hearing is, and I think that's true when you're in depression, you have like a brick wall in front of you and you can't see very far ahead of you. But maybe off to the right, there's a direction, there's a path that takes you off in a different direction, which brings you to the future, and you start thinking about what you need, like you said, to get to that point, rather than going back into that loop about what the hell happened and thinking about it and thinking about things that you can't change. Um, I think this way about problems is that there's so many different problems in this world that need to be solved. Somebody needs to solve them. There are countless. I mean, the list never ends, but they're not all of our problems. And
Right.
we have to define a problem as for what it is and determine if it's ours or not. And
Right.
sometimes it's that we're just saying that's not our problem when it is. And then other times we're saying, oh, that is our problem. And it's not really.
Well, let me tell you something too that might offend some people, and I don't mean to
Go
offend
ahead.
people.
This is a swift kick in the ass. Offend
Good,
away.
okay, because I'm kind of giving it a little swift quick. When you are depressed, like I was, no other person matters except myself. The more selfish you become, the more depressed you become.
Mm.
Because that is not the way you were meant to be, is to think about yourself and not think about other people. Remember, our natural state is to be open, forgiving, kind, but also the key mark of all that is service. And so when we are into a very TAC mode where we're highly depressed, when I was depressed in my situation with the family business, no other person in this earth mattered except me. Not my wife, not my father, not my brother, not my family, whatever. And I expected the world to say, look, world, I am hurting. So why are you not all thinking about my hurt? Now, the problem is that the world, if it could answer back, it would go in and say, well, Mr. Thatcher, first of all, One, you're not thinking about our hurt, so we're a little bit offended by that. We're hurting in some ways that you don't even know about because you don't even want to care to know about. And the second thing that unfortunately you've got to realize, sir, is that I can't do anything that you want to do yourself. If you want to sit on a tack and suffer and be in pain and you will not get off when you have the power to do so, what do you expect me to do for you? I can't pull you off. I'm not going to take you away from your free agency because if I pull you off, you're going to run back right on it and sit right on it again because then you'll lose your story of victimhood. And hey, what do you
Hmm.
mean? People feel sorry for me. No, 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 no. We want you to get off the tax so that now you have to be responsible. And then you have to now think about another person and think about, see, like for example, let's take an example so we can understand this. Let's say that you have been working very hard at a job and you're ready, you wanting that promotion. And the
Hmm.
boss comes down and says, you know what? I'm going to give the promotion to someone else. Now, that's the pain part. Ouch, that hurts. I was really looking forward to that. Expectations are upsets waiting to happen. You really were thinking about it. You had your, maybe a new property picked out. You were going to, upgrade your
Hmm.
income. You were all excited about it. It didn't happen. Okay, what's the natural tendency to do? To get right on it. And what does get right on it mean? Complaining about the organization, complaining how everything was done. And then once you get on it, say, okay, I'm going to show this company that they are, I'm going to show them up. I'm not going to come to work on time, or I'm going to come to work, but I'm not going to work very hard. And I'm going to, kind of give little negative feelings to everybody in the organization
Hmm.
and whatever. That is a racket. That takes a complaint that you build into a narrative that says, hey, they were, unfair to me. They didn't treat me right or whatever. Now, it can be the case where maybe there was some prejudice and you can maybe ground that. But if you ground that, then you then got to go to the choice and say, okay, what am I going to be? And you know what the person is who is off the tack? He's going to say, okay, well, I am still going to be the hardest working employee. I'm still going to give it my very best effort.
Hmm.
Well, why would you do that? Because that's what I'm committed to. And that's what my values are. And my values are not going to be deterred by if I get a promotion or not. I'm going to be the very best person I can be. I'm going to go to the boss. I'm going to say, geez, that promotion was really important to me. Can you tell me how I can be better? Because guess what? I'm committed to being a better person. I'm committed to being your best employee ever. Now, what do you think the boss is going to think about the two scenarios? The one person is living in justification and bitterness and all of that, and the other person is living in possibility and really effective action. I mean, there's going to be some times when things are going to happen that we do not like. And we're going to say, wow, that was painful, and I really don't like it. But then we're going to measure our character by what choice we decide when that happens. Are we going to move forward towards our commitment or are we going to move backwards to our complaint? That's the real key.
And just to add on to what you said, because I've actually been exactly in that position with my job
Yeah.
a long time ago, where I really felt like the organization was holding me back. I was the good old boy network, and they knew who they were giving the job to before they even posted. And
Right.
that was the case, certainly, in some of the job postings. But 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 the truth of the matter is that I did not really fit the bill for what they were looking for and what they felt that
Right.
they needed. It had little to do with me. And I had to take control of that and take control of my own career and say, listen, I'm not going to wait for that promotion. If I want to rise up the ranks, I'm going to get aggressive and assertive. Well, I'm going to get assertive about it. But on that aggressive
Right.
note that just slipped out, if you have experienced rejection, if you think you're being wronged, that's going to come out in your attitude. I don't care how well you think you hide it.
Oh, yeah.
People
It will.
see right through the BS where you try to say it. And that's
Right.
why on this show. I just say it as it is because
No,
you
yeah,
can't hide that. And when you have a different attitude that you say, you know what? I understand that the organization did what it's best for the organization's survival, and I'm going to do what's best for my survival. So this didn't come together, but I got to keep going. When you start changing your attitude, things do start coming your way because you're more open to it. When you're depressed, you've got the blinders on, the opportunities are out here, but they're not coming to you because you're blocked.
yeah,
And it's just,
yeah.
just the simple attitude and then
Well, yeah.
blaming. Yeah.
Well, the thing is that we have to understand, and I want to kind of give a little bit of help as how to
Good.
handle the situation with offense, because I got offended over everything in my life, and I was the most sensitive, everybody, oh, I got offended by this and whatever, and I remember, writing down all the people that I was offended by and whatever, and I was extending the list and it was so long. And then I could even take some of those comments that I made about those people and even apply them to the loved ones that I
Wow.
was really close to. So, you can get to the point where you can be offended by absolutely everything. Now,
Yes.
here's what I think the key is. Realize that we have blind spots. As human beings, we are not allowed to see outside of ourselves. We just don't have that capability. That's why God has other people here. We're not here alone. And what those people do is they help us see our blind spots that we can't see ourselves. So in the book, I use an example of this lady that was in her classroom and she thought she was an excellent teacher. And one of her friends went to her and said, "You know, you're pretty discourteous to a lot of
Hmm.
students. Wow, you're abrupt." And she went, "Are you my friend? How dare you would say that? What do you mean I'm abrupt?" And she said, "Well, I am your friend, and I'm telling you to be, giving you some feedback." And she says, "Okay, well, I don't want some feedback, so just consider our friendship over." But then she thought about it, and she said, as she got home that night, and said, "Well, my friend's always been a good friend. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go take a video and I'll video my classroom and I'll go see exactly what the situation is." And she found out and she went, "Oh my gosh, my friend was right. I
Yeah.
am pretty abrupt. I'm not very kind, whatever." Now, did she want to be that way? Was she purposely being that way? Of course not. All
Right.
she was is she couldn't see the blind spots. And so, if we'll allow people to give us information, if we will not block that off, now sometimes it's not going to be the information we want to hear. Sometimes they're going to say something and we're going to say, "Wow,
And
I
that's a good
really didn't want
friend.
to hear that."
That's a
Yeah,
good friend who
right. That
tells you
is a good
that.
friend. Right. I really don't want to hear that.
Right.
But what I do, but what I do want to hear is that is, the good information. And then we have the ability, if somebody says something and says, "You know what? I think you're a real jerk." You should go right to that person and say, "Okay, thank you very much. Can you tell me why you think I'm a jerk?" I mean, I made one of my videos that I posted on TikTok and I got a real rude comment from it, whatever. And I said, "Thank you very much. And if you feel that way, that is fine. But can you tell me how you got to your conclusion? What is it that, offensive or whatever?"
Yeah.
And then when you did that, no comment right back because
Of
all he
course.
wants to do is run his racket. Oh, he just wants to vent. He doesn't want to do anything constructive. But you can take people's comments and you can say, "Okay, thank you very much. Now, am I going to look at them and do they have validity for me? Do I feel like they're worth it? Then great. Let's take it. Let's put it on me and let's try to be better. If they're no good, throw them in the
Yeah.
wastebasket. Throw them in the wastebasket. But
I
don't allow them to define who you are as a person. Because when you are that loving, peaceful, kind of person, it is very hard. You become quite untouchable. Not that you can't be hurt at times, and that not we're not perfect, but we have the ability to really have tremendous strength that you don't imagine is possible.
Yeah, I'm going back to reading the comments. Some people just like to create they say things knowing that it is upsetting to other people. They do it on purpose
Oh yeah.
and they get
Oh
their
yeah.
jollies out of it. Um, and I think it's just like cyberbullying in a lot of ways. It's easy to get down, and especially when people are so rude and saying things that they would never say to a person
Right.
face to face. And
Right.
I've always, I've been tempted to say that you wouldn't say that to my face because,
Right. Yeah. Right.
but I've been wanting to go there, but I haven't gone there. But I have offered some people to come on to the show to say, come on, let's have a you tell me exactly what you
Yeah.
think about how women are insecure, weak and stupid and things like that. And let's have a discussion about how you feel about that.
Oh
And let
yeah.
me also bring some other people on. Let's have a panel discussion.
Right.
Just silence. Burn.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You
Oh
know,
yeah. Yeah.
and and that's the thing with that I found with bullies, especially at work. Stand up to them once. They will never, they'll never mess with you again. They'll,
Yeah, well, absolutely. And
so
so yeah, and so you make a really good point because what you need to be is you need to have the concept of assertiveness. And I use
hmm,
a principle in the book about the two lighthouses. The one lighthouse is we need people. The other lighthouse is that people can hurt us. So we've got to be able to learn how to navigate. The best way to navigate between those two lighthouses is to be assertive. And assertive means I'm not aggressive, where I say it's my way and only my way, but I'm not passive, where I say throw it on me, whatever you want to do to me, hit me, whatever you want to do. I'm assertive, realizing that I'm going to have the balance between your rights and my rights. And that's the way that can navigate you through the pathway of life. And so I'm not asking you to get on your knees and I'm not asking you to get on your pedestal where your
hmm.
ego takes over and it's all about you and you're always thinking about you or anything like that. I'm asking you to stand up. And when you talk to people, you look at them in the eye and you look at them directly and you look at them with confidence and you look at them like you're a great person because you are a great person. Doesn't mean you don't have issues, doesn't mean you don't have problems or whatever, but you really are a great person and you can believe that you're a great person because that really is something that you can ground and believe.
That's wonderful. I hope people are listening and I mean really listening to what you have to say here because it goes pretty deep. And you're talking about how people view themselves and the way we view ourselves, it was not created overnight.
Mm.
Um, but going back to the recurring thought, so someone has a recurring thought to keep putting themselves down. Any suggestions on what they can do or
Well, they're
any?
getting a payoff, right, from that, right? I mean, they're able to feed that narrative and feed that story, and so right after the racket comes the payoff. I mean, those payoffs are pretty attractive.
Okay.
So they're not going to be easy
So
to
they
give
keep
up on.
playing until the payoff isn't great
Well,
anymore.
yeah, I mean, I think what happens is when real change occurs and when you recognize that the cost of you holding on to this complaint and this story and whatever
Hmm.
is just far greater than the payoff. If the payoff is greater than the cost, you're going to keep it going. And you're going to keep it going as long as you feel that way. But once you understand that the cost is greater than the payoff, and see, that's the problem with me is that when I took on that road and I took the wrong turn, I was getting a payoff. I mean, I was getting supported by, my mom. Oh, hey, how could you do this to our son? And et cetera, et cetera. And I'm getting all this attention and all of this,
Mm-hmm.
talk about me, 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 me. That's a wonderful payoff. And people love attention, and they even if it's a soggy potato chip, it's a
Yeah.
potato chip. They'll take it. But that is not what is important here because you got to realize that that won't get you the happiness you need, because eventually the costs are going to surface and you're going to realize that, wow, it's costing me love, it's costing me companionship, it's costing me friendship. I mean, my situation in the family business did not just extend to the inner family, it started affecting everybody outside the family. It was like an oil spill in a lake where
Wow.
it just kept going and going and going and going and going. So, don't think that one of the things that people make a mistake on is they think, well, if I'm angry, I'll just keep it within inside the circle. No, you don't. No, you don't. When you're angry, it spreads and it
Hmm.
spreads and it spreads. And the more you feed to it, the stronger it goes and the stronger it spreads and whatever. So it's very hard to try to keep that. And even though you might think that you're keeping it inside, like, you have angry with another
Yeah.
person, somebody is going to be able to feel it and they're going to say, wow, something's not quite right with you today. And then you can go in and you can explain everything and try to get their sympathy and say, oh, whatever. But usually gossip is never the answer. Gossip just, it might make you feel good by, knocking a person
Yeah.
down to raise you up, but that's artificial and that's fake and that's not the way it needs to be.
You know, through our discussion, I'm thinking about kind of my current life. And I'm going through this kind of a spiritual awakening and doing a lot of kind of deep dives on my own life. And what I'm finding, and I only share this because it is something that I have been suffering from. And it's something that I detached myself from pain that I was experiencing in my marriage, because my wife was being difficult and I just really didn't want to be around her. So I
Yeah,
would go off and work landscaping around the yard. I'd go and mow the grass. I'd
yeah,
go organize the shed. I'd do just about anything
yeah.
to be with my wife. And there were always good reasons for that. Like if your wife is very pregnant and hormonal because of that,
Oh, sure.
and it's the peak of summer, it is not pleasant for anybody. There's good reasons. There's good reasons for it, but you don't think about what you're doing is you're delaying the pain. Really, I was avoiding a lot of the pain rather than investing the time with my wife and getting more to the bottom of really help. You know, I was looking out for my own needs rather than, I guess, hers, but maybe it was for everybody's best. Who knows? As you take a deep dive into these things, um, you start to connect the dots on things. Like you said, we all have blind spots, and I'm going, I'm seeing a therapist as well, which helps me, like you said, she's shining a light and making me think about different things. So I think about the different ways that I've created space and distance between my wife and I in the 25 years we've been married. And it's really easy to do, and it wasn't something conscious, but it's all related to pain and suffering, or trying to delay suffering, or not suffer. Who No one wants to suffer. But I guess we
Oh,
all suffer in different ways, and we also have different tolerances to pain too.
yeah. Well, in your wife's situation, what we tend to not think about is she's hurting.
Right,
She's in pain. And so, what can I do to try to address that pain? What can I do to try to help? Sometimes it's get out of my way and don't, give me
right, right.
space. And if you want space, whatever. What I don't want people to do in relationships is feel that they have to manage their spouse emotions, where they put them upon themselves and they say, okay, well, I'm going to try to be, a pretzel. And if you don't like me to be a pretzel, I'll try to be a square. And if you don't want me to be a square, I'll try
Hmm.
to be a triangle. No,
Yeah, no, I
no,
don't think
no,
anyone
no,
wants
no,
that.
no. Yeah, right.
It's not
Uh,
good.
They don't want that either because all they do is lose respect for that. What they want you to do is to understand exactly what their situation is and to then take the responsibility part to realize that you're going to be your strong self so that they have something that they can grab to that they feel very, very comfortable with. If you're coming into the situation where you know they said something that was offensive and you just want to not have any issues, and so you come back and you apologize and say, well, I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to do that or whatever,
Hmm.
when you really didn't do anything. That doesn't help. That doesn't help. You got to be able to say, hey, I mean, one of the reasons why I was able to get off the tack is because the guys would, friends and everything, would not let me run my rackets, especially my wife. I mean, I would accuse her of saying, wow, boy, you're not very sensitive. You're not very compassionate. She says, no, I am. I'm just not going to let you run your racket. And, if you want to run your racket, go run it. But,
But not
I've
with
got a
me.
family to raise. I've got things to do and whatever. And I'm not going to,
Hmm.
entertain your racket. And so it's not that, it's not that we don't want to be there for people or whatever, but we don't want to support their racket. We want to say, hey, if like for example, if your spouse is mean to you or whatever, just say, wow, okay, she needs space, and she knows where I am, and when she's ready to talk to me, she can knock on the door and say, hey, I want to talk.
Hmm.
And until then, you go in and say, I'm going to give her space and I'm going to go in and do my life. When can you do that? When you're your strong self, right? When you have
Yep.
a future, when you have committed to something, because then that can be the thing that's so important, not the attachment type part. I mean, the best relationships are one with strong, not strong and then dependent and attached, or
Hmm.
strong, dependent and attached, right? It's strong. And
Right.
then we work together strong to make a beautiful life. So don't support people with the rackets. I always say when somebody's on it, don't let them get you on it.
And that's great. I love that. Thank you so much. That's personally that was very helpful to me. And I think our listeners will I think they'll really enjoy that. I think you had a lot of really good just nuggets of information. Really good. I
Well,
love this.
I've been down I've taken the wrong exit so many times that I know that that's not the right exit. And
Yeah.
finally, I get myself back on the right road. And so, I mean, when you're a professional tax sitter, you get very good at being able to create all of these wonderful ways of kind of insulating yourself. And that's why I kind of use the stage two of the TAC, this idea of compensation, whether it be addictions or working really hard or, avoidance or whatever it may
Hmm.
be. You may think that you're off the tack, but in reality, you're just compensating and you're not off the tack. And so make sure you're off it. Don't put something underneath it and say, well, I don't feel any pain, so obviously this is, pretty good. But you're not being your best self when you're compensating. You're being your best self when you're thriving and you're racket free
Yeah.
and you have that loving state that we talked about
Yeah.
of being giving, kind, and open to love and at peace.
So I think this is going to be a good time to talk about pain in and of itself. Pain is not necessarily
Okay.
a bad thing. I mean, it can serve a good purpose to go through something painful. And sometimes you have to go through a painful process to get through something, to get to something better. Um, so I think it's maybe how you define the pain or def yeah, I guess define the pain. Because or how you yeah, I guess maybe how you look at the pain too as well. Because um I mean life is ups and downs, it's you're not always going to be our most cheery self. Sometimes things do happen and it's going to hit us hard, and it's ups and downs. It's not all good times. It's not
Right.
all bad times. Hopefully as you learn, um, to get by, it just gets better. Hopefully, I think we spend our whole life kind of learning how to live, but sometimes,
Yeah, we do.
sometimes there's pain that comes out of that, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's not our choice, even. I think that's really how this podcast got started, was that pain that kind of pushes us in a positive direction. That's what a swift kick in the ass is. It's not necessarily um, pleasant, but it is hopefully positive and motivational and gets you on a good path, thinking about the future rather than the past. See, I'm trying to just feed back to what you were saying before. Um, but there are also limits too, like what you were saying about if you're used to living on the tack, maybe your ass is leathery. It can handle it. If you're sitting on something sharp, you've got some cut that you build some cushion over time, right? And so
Yes.
it doesn't change the fact that it's a tack. You're sitting on a tack.
Well, okay. Let's address some of those things. First of
Okay.
all, number one, I have a saying about positive thinking.
Okay.
Positive thinking is like putting whipped cream over dog food. Okay? When pain happens, pain is real.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying to say that is not real. And I'm not saying no, it didn't happen. And I'm not saying to resist, because what you resist usually persists. The more you try to push that pain away, the more it wants to say, I'm here. I'm moved in with you now. So I'm your roommate. Don't try to push me out,
Hmm.
because I'll just make myself even more known to you if you do. So that's the first thing. So you've got to realize that when something happens and you do feel something, depression or remorse or real guilt or something really triggers a truth, where they say the truth hurts and you
Mm-hmm.
might hear it from somebody. Remember that lighthouse. One of the lighthouses is people can hurt us, and they can hurt us badly, really badly, to the point that, it can cause us a lot of problems. So what I don't want you to do is think, okay, I'm just going to put whipped cream over that and it doesn't
Right.
mean anything. Oh, no, it does. It does. And you got to look at that and you got to say, wow, that was really hurtful. Now, what emotion am I feeling? And one of the things that, because there's this voice inside our head that's just constantly going all the time, and just always telling us things to do and all of that. Sometimes what I like to do is say to the voice, I say, look, okay, I need you to shut up, and you're not going to shut up. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a pad of paper down here, and I'm going to write everything that you're saying to me. Okay? Now you've had a chance to speak. Now shut up and go in the corner and just shut up, because I don't want to hear you anymore. Then you can look at that and then say, okay, here's my emotion. And in my book, I go into the chapter of hurt and really how to address hurt. And one of the things that you have to realize with hurt and upsets is whatever, is that you're the one that's kind of being upset, and you're the one that's kind of, feeling this way. And so now you have to say, okay, so here's the emotion I'm feeling, and it's okay. It's all right. I'm feeling anger right now. Great.
Mm-hmm.
What is a good, effective way to feel anger? Rather than put the whipped cream over the dog food and say, no, there's no anger there. No, I'm not angry at all. When in reality, you really are. Because see, when you start to repress and repress and repress and repress, then the body says, okay, I either need to do something that's very, very aggressive and go burn a building down, or if you're not going to allow me to really get anything out, then I'm going to, kind of react in the way of saying, okay, then we're going to get you depressed. And so I believe my depression, and you need to kind of look at this for yourself, is all about repressed anger. The reason why I was so depressed and so down and so suicidal is I was so angry and I felt so rejected and I was so mad at my father and my brother that that emotion got buried and buried and buried and
Mm.
buried until the point was, my body says, I can't handle this anymore. You either got to
Yeah.
do something, whatever. And so what's the body do? It shuts down. It shuts down. It says, I can't work with this anymore. That's what it does.
Do you think that hitting that like rock bottom or hitting you, do you think you hit a threshold or something before you kind of,
Yes, I did. I did hit rock bottom, and I said that I can't get any. The movie with the Shawshank Redemption.
mm,
I love that line
I
where it's
love,
you either get busy living or you get busy dying. And
yeah,
I said to myself, Tom, you got to do one of two things. You either have got to take your life so you can get out of this pain. And I really believe that when people take their life, they're doing it at an act of love for themselves because they are in so much
much
pain
pain.
and they're
Yeah.
hurting so badly, they just can't stand it anymore.
It's so,
And they
that is
just,
so hard to
yeah,
to, to think
right.
about and comprehend.
Yeah.
And make it, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I totally agree with you.
No, no, no.
Oh my gosh. It's so like, and I think a lot of this too is some people are lean more towards a depressive state than others.
Yes.
Um, and for me, I have suffered depression before. I have actually taken antidepressants before for a very short period of time, these baby doses, and I felt like they did what they needed to do, and then I
Right.
got off of them right away.
Right.
But not everyone is like that, and I'm not a doctor, but the way I understand it is that um, once you go on to antidepressants, there's a large number of people that really need to go on them and stay on them
Yes.
and never come off. And
Right.
if once you go off of them, you can come back. It can come back. The depression come back harder the
Right.
second time.
Right.
Uh, so it just it cycles. So I've had some friends that were very you know concerned about that, but I'm not a depressive person, generally speaking, and I was able to pull myself out of that. I don't know if I don't think everyone can do that. Um, for me, that worked, but it's difficult for me. It's hard for me to understand depression. Um, and I've spent a lot of time trying to better understand it. But I do understand that it is kind of cyclical and that, it's a feeling that it doesn't last forever. It feels like it lasts forever, but you do have cycles and you have ups and downs.
Mhm.
And for some people, it's very, very, very serious, and maybe they don't even recognize that they're depressed.
Well, and I could take a radical view. I truly believe that if you control your thoughts, if you have the ability to control what you think, you have the ability to control depression.
Hmm.
That's what I truly believe. Now, there are some people that maybe, they say, well, it's they're chemicals, they're, the feel-good chemicals, they're just so low that we've got to do something so that
Right.
they can start producing good thoughts. That might be possible. I just know in my case, I was depressed as a person can be. And my father said, get on drugs, get on drugs. And he wanted me to see psychiatrists, and they want to say, oh, he's
Hmm.
got all this and he's got this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I just said, no, I will not do that. I will not do that because I was worried that then nobody was answering my concern that, hey,
Yeah.
you didn't treat me right. You didn't, you weren't kind to me. now you're going to put me on drugs so that you can mask you not having to be responsible.
Yes.
Do you see what I'm saying? In other words, father and brother, you're going to put me on drugs so that you can look like the good guys and me look like the bad guy. You see kind of how that mind system kind of works. And so the thing that if people are in a state where it's really bad, and I know people are really worried, then you might have to do it. You might have to
Yeah.
do it. But in my case, I refused to do it. I said, I'm not going to do it. And was probably in
I
as bad
fought
a
I fought
situation as
it.
you could get.
So my with my circumstance, my co-host, my former co-host, was diagnosed with brain cancer and was dying of a terminal
Wow.
illness. And he's my oldest.
Wow.
He was my childhood friend.
Yeah.
So, um, but that was not the only problem in my life, and I had a lot of external sources of pain, work,
Yeah.
my
Oh,
marriage,
sure.
rough, kids,
Right.
raising kids. It is a very tough period of my life. But I kind of made the same. I tried to do whatever I could, and I felt like I had to do that, and there was no point in suffering. And it did help me get over that hump, but that was not something I saw as a long-term solution. And I like what you said. The medications, they serve their purpose. They have a purpose, and sometimes they are absolutely necessary. I mean, I'm not one to judge that. That's for doctor. But
Right. And I agree with that completely. I mean, and I'm not judging your circumstances that drugs didn't work for you.
oh
I
yeah,
can only speak from my
yeah,
circumstance and say
right.
I,
And this is from my circumstance.
right, exactly.
And
And
from
so,
my own
yeah,
viewpoint, um, I have a doctor friend who actually, the way he explains it is he says, I don't like to take aspirin when I get headaches or Tylenol or anything because I want my body to learn how to get rid of that headache naturally. Because if I take the medication, my body is going to adapt and say, "Oh yeah, this is not something I have to worry about. This is not a problem for me." Because
right.
we become dependent on that. And like I generally don't take any type of painkillers like Tylenol or aspirin or anything like that. I just suffered through it. It's got to be really bad.
Well, yeah, and you know what's so interesting about the situation with painkillers is painkillers, the way they work, as I understand it, and I'm not a doctor either, but the way they work, as I understand, is they block the signal to the brain that says that there's pain, right?
Right.
But guess what?
The pain's
There's
still
still
there.
pain, right? And so, like when I was, having an issue with my back, instead of doing the back exercises and the daily maintenance that's necessary to have a strong back and a healthy core, I would, be golfing there and I'd say, okay, where's the ibuprofen? And let's just, give me two and say, great, I'm not feeling any pain. And so because I'm not feeling any pain, then I'm healed. There's no pain there. No, you've only blocked the pain. And so
Right.
then you do that long enough, then the body gives you a herniated disc and says, guess what? I was always in pain, Tom. I was always in
I
pain.
had three
Right. I
herniated
had
disc. I
two.
know what you're talking
And,
about.
right. And so because you didn't take care of me, because you didn't do the maintenance that you needed to do, the daily maintenance, you made a small problem into a huge problem and you tried to mask it. So this is what I mean when you get on the second stage of the TAC. Because you're not feeling anything, you think, wow, okay, I've got this resolved, this addiction, it's really helping. It's really working. It's great. I mean, one of my co-authors on my workbook, Tom Bleeker, said that, Richard Pryor said he was really funny when he was on drugs. And when he got off drugs, he was no longer funny. So there he felt like he had to have drugs to remain
Hmm.
funny. Well, sure, you can mean drugs to mean funny, but if you keep on the drugs, you're going to die. So, I mean, you have to understand that it's still there. And that's what I'm trying to say with the whipped cream over the dog food. It is dog food. Don't try to say it's not dog food because you can't really get effective change unless you really deal with what something is.
Yeah. Dog poop, right? Not dog
Well, I use
food.
dog. I use dog food.
And I was thinking,
It could be
if there's
dog
dog
poop.
poop, I'm picking it up. I'm not gonna put a whipped cream on. That was not a good. I guess dog food. Yeah, it's a little. That's a little more
In other
palatable
words,
than
you're doing what you should do. You should address it, right? You got to address it. You got to take care of it. You got to fix it up. I mean, when you get off the tack, then you got to go into cleanup mode and you got to say, okay. I mean, when I was finally off the tack, I said, I have made so much mess with my family, with my wife, with my kids, with my friends, that now I got to go clean it up. And the cleanup is hard,
hard.
it's slow, it's painful. But that's
It's
what I needed to do to
necessary.
get back on the track. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So if you make a mess made, you got to be responsible and you got to say, okay, I got to clean up the mess and then get back on the right track and move on.
Yeah. No, that's man. That's great. I think we should probably wrap this up because we've been going a while. It's time has passed by so quickly.
It has. It has.
Um,
It's been a great conversation. Thanks so much.
so one of the things you had covered, oh, I don't know how quickly we can cover it, but if we can, it'd be great. How to stop rehearsing pain and start living differently. What do you mean by that necessarily? Rehearsing pain. Are you saying that like it's part of the act, or is that part of the racket that you're talking about?
Well, no, no, I'm not saying stop rehearsing pain. I'm saying just don't suffer. You can be in pain, just don't add the suffering part to it. So, for example, after I got, out of surgery and everything, one time I was really in pain and I was screaming and,
Right.
going, wow. And my wife, who's a nurse, it says, well, is it really that bad? And I go, well, what do you mean? I mean, yeah, you're in pain, but is it that much pain? Is it that bad or whatever? And so then you go and you breathe and you relax and you learn how to kind of
Hmm.
handle the situation with pain. And so then the pain is not as bad as you could make it. So I'm not trying to say that you don't get rid of pain. I'm just saying don't grow pain into unbearable suffering. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. I get you. I'll make a last point because I think it's relevant. So, I practice martial arts, and
Good
I
for
re-
you.
and I noticed that when you're a lower belt, when you get hit or you hit someone in the arm, they say "ow," and it's like it's painful and it's jolting, like when you
Yeah,
first start
sure.
getting hit. But as you go up in degrees and in belts, you're like, bring it on. You're like, is that all you're doing? You're like, just like a little fly. You know, it's just perception. And I think like if compare like if you're in a street fight, a trained fighter knows what it feels like to be hit. Someone who's not used to fighting is not going to know that feeling, and it could be a whopper. I mean, it's could throw like be very painful, be very
Right.
painful.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
but a fighter is going to not think of that as that much pain because he's used to it. You
Yeah.
know, so again, I think it's too what it the perception and what you're used to and what you're willing, I guess, maybe to willing to accept it as, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, that's
Like, I mean,
that's
it,
that's a really interesting thing about how people can endure more pain than others just
yeah,
because of toughness and everything. And that's something that really gives a lot of thought. That's a very interesting point.
like the Marines. I mean,
Yeah.
they go through these simulation tests and so forth, and man, I wouldn't want to go. through that stuff, but they do it for a reason,
Right.
and they build this mental fortitude that they can push through anything. Man,
Yeah.
I admire that. I don't know if I can't do that. I'm not,
No,
I'm not like
no,
that.
I can get that, but I think what I'm trying to do is more of the pain of the emotional pain, not what something outside does to us, what we inside
Right,
do to
right,
us.
right. Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. I
yeah.
mean, my book's not trying to say, hey, learn to take a two by four,
Oh yeah, no,
and
no, no.
hit
Yes, I
yourself
know.
over
Yeah,
the
it's not
back
the
20 times so it doesn't hurt. I mean, with me, it's going to hurt
well,
every single time and break my back,
I
So,
think
yeah.
that I think sometimes though they go together. The
Okay.
emotional pain and the physical pain. Like for instance, if you have the back issues, you've got in order to get through that, you've got to face that physical pain and doing your stretching and your exercises
Right.
and and all of that to work yourself back in shape. There's a certain amount of physical pain that you're going to
All right.
experience, and
Yeah.
that will stop a lot of people. But the first pain that you have to get over is, are you going to do it or not?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's really right. And so when you do have an injury or something like that, yeah, I mean, give yourself the time and don't and the reality to understand that pain is a part of life and that, we have to learn how to work with it and to address it. But, from the back standpoint, the best thing to do is do your exercises every day so you don't have, these breakdowns.
Yeah.
That's the real key point.
All right. Well, if that sounds like a good place to wrap this up, unless you have a closing remark that you'd like to make. Um,
Well, I just want to make one closing remark. I just
sure.
want to say, we start in life as this beautiful person, this baby, right? We're loving, we're kind, we're at peace, and whatever. And then this thing called life hits us. And then we build and create layers and everything like that. And then that becomes kind of the lens of how we look at everything through the world. I really believe the whole purpose of life is just basically where we begin, we go through the life, we unwrap that, we address it, we get responsible, we do all the necessary things to do so that we can just be that at the end. And if we are that at the end, I think we've really been successful. And so you really look at trying to just get back to what you were in the beginning. And if you can do that, then I think you've certainly made great strides, great progress.
Well, I think that's great advice for people and something to strive for. Because let's face it, sometimes we don't really know what we're trying to achieve sometimes. But
Mhm.
I agree. Especially part of what I've been going through recently. Some of the things that I've woken to have brought me back to how I used to feel when I was like a teenager and much younger. Um, and it just like it's really easy to feel old. The older you get, the older you get, the easier it is. And a
Yeah.
lot of people will just say, "Oh, I feel that pain. It's just life." I mean, that's
Yeah.
just part of getting old. But
Oh, yeah.
that's not
Sure.
necessarily something you have to accept. Um, a lot of people do, but I think it catches up with you. So my approach is to try to steed that off. I'm going to fight it, honestly. I'm going to
Yeah. Yeah.
fight it as much as I can.
Oh, sure. Sure. Yeah. Well, however you choose to live with it, just don't let pain inform you. Don't let it control you. That's the message I'm trying to say.
Oh, I like that. Yes, I love it. Well, that's a perfect place to end. Uh, to everyone, again, this is Thomas Thatcher. And is there a good way for people to reach out to you or
TheTACPhilosophy.com. Just go to my website, TheTACPhilosophy.com. You've got, information there. I've got a link tree site where they can get, free information. They can get, a week-long worksheet on how to work through the TAC for a week, and lots of good stuff on that website. So just go to the website, TheTACPhilosophy.com.
awesome? Perfect. And also, I saw your book is out there on Amazon too, which is the TAC
And
Philosophy.
it's, yeah, it should be in some other formats as well. It should be pretty
Yeah. So I
widespread.
think there's a
So
lot of useful information out there. And I really do hope that our listeners, I hope that you learned something tonight that kind of opened your eyes and changes your view of the world in a way that there's no going back. There's only moving forward.
forward,
Yeah,
always forward.
always. But thank you again for joining me on the show. And to my listeners, as always, please like and subscribe. Uh, please let me know if you have an interesting story to tell and has a benefit to our listeners about building resilience and personal growth. Love to hear from you. I'm at John at a Swift Kick in the Ass. I'm John Curren. Thank you again, Thomas Thatcher.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. Hope you got your ass moving. Until then, until the next time, I'm out of here. Peace.